Sigma males are known for self-awareness. They analyze everything, their choices, emotions, and surroundings, often more deeply than anyone else. Yet even they have blind spots. Their independence and discipline give them a kind of tunnel vision, a way of living that hides certain truths about themselves. They're not blind to life, they're blind to how life shapes them in ways they never admit. The Sigma male's greatest strength is his self-reliance. He walks alone, makes his own rules, and depends on no one. But inside that independence hides quiet costs. The same traits that make him powerful also make him vulnerable in ways he rarely notices. He avoids weakness so effectively that he doesn't always see when it starts to grow beneath the surface. This isn't about criticizing Sigma males, it's about reflection. Strength without reflection can turn into isolation, and clarity without openness can become rigidity. There are sides of the Sigma identity that even the Sigma himself overlooks. These are not flaws but realities that deserve recognition. This video explores the truths that Sigma males often fail to see about themselves, the subtle blind spots behind the independence, control, and calm exterior. These are the things that shape them quietly, even when they believe they're in full control. Thing number 1. Underestimating the cost of solitude. For Sigma males, solitude is sacred. It's their space for thought, recovery, and freedom. They see being alone as peace, not punishment. But what they often fail to see is that solitude, when overused, carries a price, one they rarely notice until it's already taken effect. Time alone sharpens focus. It clears noise and strengthens purpose. But too much of it can slowly dull emotional connection. The Sigma male often forgets that solitude isn't the same as stillness. When you spend too long in your own mind, it can turn from clarity into confinement. He convinces himself that he doesn't need company, that peace only exists in silence. What he misses is how connection doesn't weaken him, it grounds him. People give perspective. Interaction introduces unpredictability, and unpredictability builds growth. The Sigma male's independence sometimes blinds him to how human connection refines his insight. He's also unaware of how his solitude affects others. To him, disappearing for a few days is normal, a way to reset. But to the people who care about him, it can feel like rejection. They don't see a man resting, they see a man drifting away. Over time, that distance can close doors without him realizing it. The cost of solitude is subtle. It doesn't show up as pain, but as disconnection, small, unnoticed shifts in how others relate to him. The Sigma male thinks he's maintaining balance when he's actually fading from the very world that once inspired him. Solitude is power when controlled, but a prison when absolute. The Sigma male rarely sees when that line is crossed. That's what makes this his first blind spot, believing peace and isolation are the same thing. Thing number 2. Ignoring emotional vulnerability. While needing it, Sigma males pride themselves on control. They process emotion internally and rarely let feelings show. They view vulnerability as something dangerous, a loss of balance. To them, control equals strength, and exposure equals weakness. But what they fail to see is that their emotional restraint hides a deeper need for connection and understanding. By refusing to show vulnerability, the Sigma male builds an image of emotional independence. But that wall doesn't make him immune to emotion, it only traps it inside. He might tell himself he's above emotional chaos, but deep down he still feels the same needs as anyone else, to be seen, understood, and trusted. The difference is he doesn't allow it to show. This constant self-containment has consequences. The Sigma male often misunderstands his own emotional fatigue. He feels drained or restless without realizing it's not work or solitude causing it. It's the weight of suppressed emotion. By holding everything in, he blocks his own release. He also misses how this behavior affects others. People close to him often want to connect on an emotional level, but his distance makes that difficult. He might think his silence is protecting them from his inner world, but what they feel is exclusion. They don't see control, they see absence. The truth is, vulnerability doesn't weaken the Sigma male, it deepens him. Admitting emotion doesn't take away his strength, it adds dimension to it. His greatest insight often comes from moments of honesty, not control. But because he's trained himself to avoid exposure, he fails to see how showing emotion could actually make him more complete. Sigma males understand logic, discipline, and purpose better than anyone. What they often fail to see is that emotions are not a threat to those things, they're part of them. A Sigma male's balance depends not just on strength, but on the courage to let someone see behind that strength once in a while. Thing number 3. Believing independence means no one needs you. Sigma males take pride in being self-sufficient. They build their lives on the belief that depending on others creates weakness. They prefer to move alone, solve alone, and succeed alone. It's a mindset that gives them confidence and control. But what they often fail to see is that independence can create an illusion, the belief that no one else depends on them, and that their presence isn't essential to anyone else's life. The Sigma male's detachment makes him underestimate how much his stability affects others. Because he doesn't openly express emotion, he assumes people don't look to him for comfort. Because he doesn't seek validation, he forgets that others might find strength in his example. What he fails to see is that even silence can inspire, and even distance can influence. He doesn't realize that people sometimes rely on him quietly, for guidance, for calmness, for reassurance. His independence becomes a mirror others look into, especially those searching for strength. Yet he often dismisses that impact, thinking it doesn't matter. To him, the best way to help others is to not need them. But to others, that absence of need can feel like rejection. This blind spot also appears in relationships. Sigma males assume love means freedom, not dependency. They keep emotional distance because they think it protects both sides. What they overlook is that connection doesn't mean weakness, it's a sign of trust. When people depend on you emotionally, it's not a loss of freedom. It's a bond that gives life meaning. The Sigma male values self-mastery, but mastery without connection becomes emptiness. Independence doesn't erase human purpose. It's possible to be free and still be needed, to walk alone while others walk beside you in spirit. What the Sigma male fails to see is that true strength isn't about avoiding dependence entirely. It's about being dependable without losing yourself. Thing number 4. Overlooking the value of small talk and rituals. Sigma males dislike superficiality. They avoid gossip, small talk, and repetitive social rituals because they see them as meaningless. They prefer deep, purposeful conversation, something that reveals truth or insight. But what they fail to see is that small talk and routine interactions serve a purpose far deeper than the words themselves. Small talk builds familiarity. It creates warmth and bridges distance between people. When a Sigma male avoids it completely, he unintentionally closes doors to connection that could lead to something meaningful later. He sees surface-level chatter as noise, not realizing it's the foundation most relationships start from. Rituals work the same way. Birthday calls, weekend check-ins, casual gatherings, these are small social habits that keep relationships alive. The Sigma male often ignores them, thinking they're unnecessary. He believes that if a connection is real, it doesn't need maintenance. But he fails to see that even strong connections fade without attention. To others, his lack of small gestures feels like disinterest. They interpret silence as distance, even if the Sigma feels the same loyalty inside. He doesn't realize that sometimes people need visible proof of care, not just quiet loyalty. A simple message, a small compliment, or shared laughter can mean more than any grand action. The irony is that the Sigma male is often observant and thoughtful. He notices details others miss. Yet he doesn't act on those observations socially because he undervalues their importance. He doesn't realize that these small, ordinary moments are what make people feel seen. To him, small talk wastes time. To others, it builds trust. That's the quiet truth the Sigma male often misses. The smallest connections are sometimes the ones that matter most. Thing number 5. Assuming self-reliance prevents failure. One of the strongest Sigma beliefs is that doing everything alone is the safest way to avoid failure. When no one can let you down, you can't be disappointed. When you depend only on yourself, you're fully in control. But what the Sigma male often fails to see is that this mindset limits growth. Self-reliance prevents certain mistakes, yes, but it also prevents certain victories. By handling everything alone, the Sigma male reduces risk, but he also reduces possibility. Collaboration brings new perspectives, new methods, and new insight, things he misses when working in isolation. He values precision and control, but not all success is born from control. Some of it comes from chaos, from shared ideas, from friction that sparks creativity. Sigma males also underestimate how much they learn from others' experiences. Because they rarely ask for help, they end up solving problems the hard way. They tell themselves it's discipline, but sometimes it's pride. That pride blinds them to how efficient collaboration could be. Asking for help doesn't make them weak, it makes them adaptable. This blind spot also appears emotionally. When the Sigma male struggles, he stays silent. He believes that showing need or asking for support would betray his independence. But in doing so, he cuts himself off from one of the greatest strengths a person can have: community. There's no strength in carrying every burden alone if it leaves you too tired to move forward. Self-reliance is a virtue, but when it becomes a wall, it traps rather than protects. The Sigma male doesn't always see how much lighter life can be when effort is shared. True mastery isn't about doing everything yourself. It's about knowing when to let others stand beside you. Thing number 6. Not realizing that silence can breed misunderstanding. Sigma males are known for their quiet confidence. They rarely speak without purpose and prefer to listen rather than fill space with unnecessary words. To them, silence is control, a way to stay composed and thoughtful. But what they fail to see is that silence can easily be misread. While it feels natural to them, to others it can seem cold, dismissive, or even arrogant. People interpret silence based on emotion. When a Sigma male doesn't respond, others assume the worst, that he's angry, uninterested, or judging them. The Sigma male doesn't notice this because he knows his own intent. He sees his silence as calmness, not rejection. But since he doesn't explain himself, people are left to fill the blanks, and they often fill them wrong. In relationships, this becomes a quiet problem. Partners, friends, or co-workers may feel ignored, even when that's not his intention. The Sigma male may think he's avoiding conflict by staying quiet, but silence in emotional moments can feel like neglect. He doesn't realize that sometimes people don't want answers, they just want presence, even if it's through words. Silence is powerful when used wisely, but isolating when used too often. The Sigma male values it because it helps him observe and stay grounded. What he fails to see is that communication is not about speaking constantly, but about clarity. A few words of reassurance or acknowledgement can prevent hours of misunderstanding. The Sigma male's silence protects him, but it can also isolate him. His control over speech sometimes turns into a wall others can't climb. What he doesn't see is that his silence isn't always strength. Sometimes it's distance disguised as calm. Thing number 7, focusing on authenticity while neglecting connection. Authenticity is everything to the Sigma male. He refuses to fake, flatter, or follow. He believes that truth, even when uncomfortable, is better than pretending. It's one of his most admirable traits, but also one of his biggest blind spots. In his pursuit of authenticity, he can forget that connection often requires flexibility. Sigma males see compromise as weakness. They equate staying true to themselves with never bending. But what they fail to see is that connection doesn't always require you to change your values. Sometimes it just requires empathy. People connect not only through truth, but through understanding. The Sigma male's directness, while honest, can unintentionally hurt others. He might speak the truth without realizing the emotional cost. To him, honesty is respect. To others it can feel harsh or distant. He believes that softening his words would dilute his authenticity, but what he doesn't see is that compassion strengthens truth. It doesn't weaken it. His desire for integrity also makes him selective with people. He avoids anyone who feels shallow or inauthentic. This protects his peace, but can also isolate him from good people who are simply different. He forgets that connection doesn't require similarity. It requires effort. Sigma males believe that living honestly means standing apart, but sometimes the bravest act is letting someone in without losing yourself. Authenticity should connect, not divide. What the Sigma male fails to see is that truth spoken without warmth builds distance, not trust. Real authenticity isn't about being untouched by others. It's about staying real while still letting people close. Thing number 8. Rejecting the ladder without defining his own platform. Sigma males famously reject the social hierarchy. They refuse to climb ladders built on status, ego, or validation. To them, freedom means stepping outside the system completely. But what they often fail to see is that once they leave that structure, they must build their own, and not all of them do. The Sigma male's independence frees him from competition, but it can also leave him without direction. By rejecting society's idea of success, he sometimes forgets to define his own. Without that definition, his independence drifts. He becomes a master of avoidance rather than creation. This shows up in his work, goals, and relationships. He knows what he doesn't want, rules, control, expectations, but struggles to clearly define what he does want. His philosophy of freedom can turn into stagnation when he doesn't set a personal framework. The result is quiet frustration, a feeling of freedom that lacks fulfillment. Sigma males believe that rejecting the system guarantees clarity. In reality, it only creates space. What fills that space depends on them. Without self-defined goals, even the most disciplined Sigma can lose momentum. The danger isn't conformity, it's aimlessness. Building your own platform doesn't mean becoming like everyone else. It means creating a foundation strong enough to support your freedom. The Sigma male fails to see that true independence isn't about escaping structure. It's about designing one that fits your purpose. Rejecting the ladder is powerful, but it's only half the journey. Defining what you're climbing toward next is what gives that freedom meaning. Sigma males are often seen as the most self-aware of all personality types, sharp, controlled, and observant. Yet, as we've seen, even they have blind spots. These aren't weaknesses, but areas hidden by their own strengths. Independence hides the need for connection. Silence hides the desire to be understood. Strength hides the quiet fatigue of carrying too much alone. The Sigma male prides himself on being outside the system, detached from expectations and unaffected by pressure. But that same detachment sometimes prevents him from seeing how he impacts the world around him. He doesn't notice the admiration, the concern, or the distance he creates. He believes he's simply moving forward in peace, while others experience him as a mystery that can't be reached. Every strength becomes a shadow when it's never questioned. The Sigma male's self-control, focus, and solitude are powerful tools, but they can also become barriers. The point isn't to change who he is, but to bring awareness to how those traits shape his life. Even the strongest man needs reflection beyond logic, a quiet look inward at the things he avoids, not because they're wrong, but because they're human. Understanding these unseen truths doesn't make a Sigma less of who he is. It makes him more complete. The more he sees himself clearly, beyond independence and control, the more powerful he becomes. The man who understands his blind spots doesn't lose his mystery, he deepens it. Closing reflection. Awareness beyond strength. One of the hardest things for a Sigma male to accept is that awareness doesn't always come from solitude. Sometimes it comes from allowing others to mirror what he can't see in himself. The Sigma believes his greatest wisdom is found in silence and reflection, but some truths can only appear through interaction. The way people react to his energy, the way relationships shift around his distance, the way others read meaning into his silence. He often fails to realize that emotional insight grows not from control, but from curiosity. There's strength in asking questions, in letting someone else's perspective challenge his own. The Sigma male's independence is unshakable, but real wisdom requires both observation and vulnerability. When he lets his guard down, even slightly, he sees that control is not the same as peace. Control is about limits, peace is about acceptance. The Sigma male finds stability in control, but freedom in understanding. It's when he recognizes that distinction that he becomes something greater than a lone wolf. He becomes a grounded leader, quietly aware of both his strengths and his shadows. Sigma males are built for self-reliance. They don't wait for validation, permission, or applause. Yet the one thing they rarely give themselves is recognition, honest acknowledgement of how far they've come and how much they've grown. They're quick to critique, quick to adjust, but slow to appreciate themselves. That's the quiet irony of the Sigma mindset. They value progress but often overlook peace. They chase mastery but rarely pause to see that they've already achieved it. In rejecting the noise of the world, they sometimes silence their own sense of fulfillment. The truth they fail to see is that awareness isn't about perfection, it's about perspective. The Sigma male doesn't need to change his core, he only needs to see himself fully. The same way he studies others with precision, he must turn that gaze inward. Not to judge, but to understand. Every Sigma male reaches a point where solitude stops being about escape and starts being about clarity. When that happens, he no longer hides behind independence. He uses it as a platform to grow deeper, not further away. That's where his true strength lies, not just in standing apart, but in seeing himself clearly enough to know why.